The first selection in the 2010 National Hockey League entry draft belongs to the Edmonton Oilers.
I'm extremely excited to select from the Windsor Spitfires, Taylor Hall.
I'm still shaking right now. I'm just so honored to be included in this draft class.
Now it's time for the biggest award of the night.
And the Hart goes to Taylor Hall. To be the first Hart Trophy winner in New Jersey Devils history, I'm truly honored.
There is word this afternoon New Jersey, Arizona are working on closing a Taylor Hall deal. That deal has in fact been closed.
Taylor Hall on the move.
Taylor Hall on the move and on our minds here. Welcome to another edition of Our Line Starts. Paul Burmeister, Anson Carter, Jeremy Roenick, wondering why he came from Phoenix to Connecticut with the cold and the ice and the snow outside. Pretty psyched about that right now?
Oh yeah, I'm just so excited right now.
Yeah.
I love the snow.
Right? And the ice and the slush that's coming along.
I wish I was Taylor Hall. I wish I was going back to Phoenix.
Right.
All right.
It's harder to get up in the morning. My bones don't feel too good here.
I hear you. I hear you.
But I love being at NBC, baby.
There you go. We are indoors at a very good building here. And here's what we have on our lineup. Speaking of the desert, Taylor Hall, show packed full of him. What it means for him, for the Arizona Coyotes. We'll dive into all that, as well as Toronto Maple Leafs team president Brendan Shanahan. He joins the show, sits down for a one-on-one conversation with Pierre McGuire, covering a range of topics, including his thoughts on Mike Babcock in his tenure in Toronto. And we construct our all-decade team. These two guys have been thinking about this a lot, looking forward to the names they came up with. Last week it was defensemen and goalies. This week the guys draft 4 forward lines. Let's begin with the first giant trade of the NHL season. The Devils trading Taylor Hall to the Coyotes in exchange for 3 prospects and 2 conditional draft picks. JR, as we talked about, you live there. The team's already in first place in the Pacific. What's this mean for them now?
It means the world. This is the best thing to happen to Arizona since Arizona got a team in 1996. It was great getting Phil Kessel. There's no question that's step one. Phil Kessel's been a little bit off in his goal scoring. I think it's been hard for him to adjust to playing the type of game I think that Talk wants to play. Maybe not having the Malkins and the Crosbys to feed him the pucks, but I think he is starting to feel more comfortable. But getting a Taylor Hall, getting an MVP type player in Arizona is so important for so many reasons. Not only one, because they've had trouble scoring. Taylor Hall is going to fit that bill if he can continue to play the type of game scoring-wise and putting points that he has been. But getting that exciting player, Anson, that guy that's going to bring people to that building out in Glendale that's been so hard to attract the fans night in and night out. But to get to see a guy like Taylor Hall play is one of the main reasons why people will make that drive. So they're one of the better teams in the National Hockey League right now defensively, and I think getting Taylor Hall is a game changer for them. Way to go, Chaika, for getting this guy and not having to give up the meat and potatoes of your hockey club, and now give this team something to look forward to every single night.
And this doesn't happen without Alex Morello, the new owner, coming on and giving that green light to John and his staff there in Arizona. And I don't live in Arizona like you do, JR, but I went to a game out there last year, and it was brutal. Like, you're in Scottsdale, you're hanging out, W Hotel, having a great time, and you got to get in the car and drive 40 minutes to Glendale.
40? You must have been in the speed lane.
I was flying.
You must have been in the speed lane. It's more like an hour and a half.
Don't tell the cops out there. I was flying, and it was brutal. Like, really? I didn't want to go out there. But you're thinking about the fans in Arizona. What can you sell your fans? Hope, right? Now they have hope. Before, they hoped the team didn't move, and now they actually hope this team could actually win a Stanley Cup. First, like you said, Kessel come in there, team in first place, and now a player like Hall coming to your lineup and not really losing much. I mean, It might be a rental, but it's a big addition for the Coyotes.
No, the fans deserve it. There's no question that the fans have been waiting for something good to happen. Now this year they have a goaltender that's in the top of the league in terms of goals against, save percentage. Kemper's been absolutely fantastic. And you have a team that is winning hockey games and showing the fans that they know how to win, that they want to win, that they want to compete. My only fear in this, and maybe you can just see what you think. My only fear is that this team has been conditioned now by Rick Tocchet to play a certain way, to play gritty, to play hard, to play a 4-man system that plays in your face, plays a very good defensive style of game, and has now found a system and a belief system in a way that they can win hockey games. So now does Rick Tocchet really sit there and say, okay, I got to be in fear of my guys saying, we got the savior coming. We got an MVP that's coming that's going to save the day, that's going to put the puck in the net, and we're going to win hockey games because he's going to be there and take their foot off the gas on what has made them successful this year. I sure hope that that doesn't happen, and I'm sure Rick Tocchet is going to have his foot on that pulse as soon as Taylor Hall gets in that locker room.
I agree. I mean, you know Talk as well as I know Talk, and there's no way he's letting the team change their mentality and their identity, who they are.
But subconsciously, it can happen.
It could happen.
So what should he do to get out in front of that? What can he do?
Just address it straight up. Let the guys know. Listen here, fellas. We have Taylor Hall. He's a game changer. However, this is what has made us successful. This is what's allowed us to be in a position to acquire a player like this. So we don't change.
Ace, what's more important? Is it more important to go to the 22 guys that are in that locker room saying, listen, guys, cut the shit with your thinking. Taylor Hall is going to save the day. No, Taylor Hall is going to come help us. We need to play the same way no matter who's in the system. Or do you go to Taylor Hall and say, Taylor, we love the way you play. We want you to continue to play the way you play, but this is how we play. And you have to make sure you buy into the system and play the same way that we've been playing here. It's kind of a tough scenario.
I think you talk to both. You go to both parties. You go to your team and you go to Taylor Hall.
It's a great point.
And Taylor Hall has always said he wants to win. He hasn't had playoff success, so he wants to win. He's going to do whatever it takes to have success in the postseason, because that's only going to help his bottom line, because he's chasing the bag right now, right?
Yeah.
He wants to get paid, or else he'd have stayed in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So he wants to get paid. So he's going to do whatever it takes.
Does he want to win a Stanley Cup,
That's
too?
what I'm saying.
Right?
He wants to. So a
You think
first round exit
is that a realistic
not gonna do him any good.
expectation for this team?
Why not?
Well, I think that's what's going to be the real interesting thing here, because Taylor Hall still has to sign a contract. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year.
Right.
So does he go to Arizona thinking that Arizona now is a team that can vie for the Stanley Cup, or not even that? Can they vie for the playoffs? Does he go to Arizona and enjoy the life and sign a big-time contract because he wants the money and hope that he can be that guy that helps him there? I think right now it's getting this team to the playoffs that's number one. Mm-hmm. Thinking about a Stanley Cup, I think, is maybe a little bit too much right now. But we're going to see what Taylor Hall is going to be thinking about this, because either he's going to be able to sign a contract with the Coyotes or he wants to, because if he doesn't, we're kind of thinking of it the same mentalities of maybe what he's thinking.
Well, and you have to get in. That's bottom line. Mm-hmm. We've seen 8 seeds get in and do some damage. LA Kings, perfect example of that. There's so much parity in the league now, and it's so hard to get in the playoffs now that once you get in, anything's possible. Who would have thought last year Columbus would have upset Tampa Bay after Tampa Bay's historic season?
That's why hockey's so great. That's why the National Hockey League is so great.
That's why we watch it, not basketball.
There's no
So obviously there's a lot of excitement for good reason, not only what Arizona has done leading up to this point, but what they can do now for the next few months with Taylor Hall.
Yeah, but there's belief, Paul, and that's what's good.
As there should be, yeah. It's exciting. As you mentioned, it's good for hockey. It's great for that city. Let's go from team to player, though. What's it mean for Taylor Hall? 10 years now, 3 teams, not a lot of postseason success for the player.
It's got to be tough for Taylor Hall, because there was that debate, Taylor versus Tyler, during their draft year at Tyler Seguin. And he watched Tyler Seguin go to Boston, win a Stanley Cup, have success, only playing one other team in Dallas now. And he's probably thinking, geez, I went first overall, he went second, and he's winning championships. Yes, I've got an MVP on my mantle, but guys want to play to win Stanley Cups, not necessarily MVPs, right? Mm-hmm. So for Taylor Hall, this is a great opportunity. He's not going to a team, if you're drafted first overall to a bottom place team, you're going to one of the top teams in the National Hockey League out west now. Yep. So he has a chance now to really make his mark, because that's all he wanted. He wants a chance to win.
You know, it's funny, you say making your mark. I think he's made his mark, but has he made his mark the way that he wants? Has he made his mark to the level that maybe Taylor Hall can make his mark? To me, I don't think so. And I think that Stanley Cup is going to be the one that is going to secure that. It's great to win a Hart Trophy. There's no question. He's one of the most dynamic players in the National Hockey League. But now he can go to Arizona, Ace, and really learn from a guy who did it also in Phil Kessel. High draft pick to Boston. Boston didn't work out. He goes to Toronto. He played well in Toronto, but still didn't really work out in Toronto. He got, some bad publicity. He got some. I think they looked at him maybe a little bit as an overrated player. So he goes on to Pittsburgh. And granted, you have Malkin and Crosby, but he goes and wins 2 Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh, and he was a big part of those Stanley Cup wins. So that being said, does Taylor Hall go there and learn from a guy like Kessel of how to kind of morph your way into being that person that's going to be remembered as one of the best players ever to play the game. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic works with Phil Kessel.
That's a great point. And I think he's got another person to lean on, too, in terms of Rick Tocchet, because Tock was there in Pittsburgh with Phil Kessel. So he could actually help him with the blueprint of what it's going to take to get to the next level. But you're right, JR. Phil Kessel's a perfect example of a guy that was looked at a certain way, and then once he won, looked at a different way. You know, rightfully or wrongfully, he was perceived as this player that was a malcontent maybe in Toronto, which we all know that probably wasn't the case.
Right.
It's just people are nitpicking to find a reason for why they traded him.
I'm just going to finish this conversation off with a stamp. I am so excited for Arizona because it's been a long time overdue that this organization has gone out and gotten somebody of the Taylor Hall talent. Phil Kessel, granted, no question, that was a great trade, great pickup. I think Phil Kessel wanted to go to Arizona to be with Rick Tocchet because the relationship is so good. That was step one. But I think this step really, really sends the adrenaline in Arizona over the top. Now they have to make sure that they continue how they've built themselves this year and continue to now put the puck in the net, because that's been their problem, putting the puck. Defensively, it's all good. They're winning games, very close games, 2-1, 3-2, relied on the goaltender. Taylor Hall can allow them to put up 3-4 a game, and with that defensive aspect of it, have an exciting offensive game as well as a shutdown defensive game. So happy for Rick Tocchet. So happy for the Arizona Coyotes. Way to go, Chaika.
This is not good for us, though, because if Arizona is a good team, we'll see less of JR. You're not going to come to the studio. You're going to be at the games.
He can't get by without
No, you're not
being inside here. Come on.
No, you're not going to keep me
where's
up.
JR?
You're not going to keep me off television. I like it too much.
You guys hit on all the right words. As you said, put a stamp on Arizona. Excitement, winning, hope for what could be coming this spring and summer. Putting that behind us and moving on to New Jersey. So much preseason excitement. Where do they go from here?
Oh, man. It's panic city. I mean, you get rid of your coach. Now you get rid of your MVP star. I think this season has not gone not one iota way the way that the brass thought, that the fans thought, or even the players thought. I mean, I feel bad for Corey Schneider. I mean, he got abducted by aliens. I know he's been hurt. I know he's had injury problems, but when he has been in net, it's just like it's almost like he has a sheet in front of his eyes. And this is a very, very good goaltender and a great guy. I feel bad for Corey Schneider, but then you got your first number one pick in Jack Hughes. He's having a little bit slower development. Heischer has just been okay. This is a team right now that I think is a little panic-stricken and doing anything they can to try to salvage the season.
Well, nobody's having career years. I mean, everyone's having just an average year. Wayne Simmons, he's not getting the puck in front of the net. Their power play's been okay. PK, I'm not sure if he's healthy right now. He's been just okay. Nico Hischier is a guy that I'm looking at right now. You look at the other first-rounders who are drafted in that same draft. I believe Cale Makar is a guy that comes to mind. Heiskanen comes to mind. And Hischier was drafted first overall. Like, you can't have players drafted third, fourth, fifth after you surpass you. I mean, his career is still early and it's still young, and he's signed a huge ticket. You hope he becomes the player that Shiro and the New Jersey Devils hope that he could develop into, because if he doesn't, you can't miss at number ones. Jack Hughes, I always thought it would take him a little bit more time. He's a kid, man. You see Jack Hughes.
He's going to be great.
He's 18.
Yeah, Jack Hughes is going to be fine.
He's going to be good. He's going to be good. Just give him some time. I think this is a team that could use a nice lottery pick this year. Alex Lafreniere, good young French hockey player, could be number one. Quentin Byfield, big kid, looks like Malkin out of Sudbury, could be a number one draft pick too. If you have these players, you add them to who New Jersey has right now, they could build something special, but it's going to take time. I mean, all the hype going the season, I mean, it's all for naught.
They have some big worries right now. The one thing they have going is their cross river rivals in the New York Rangers are just doing okay, not doing great. So they don't have to really challenge them in terms of who's battling the scales there on the stats, but the New York Islanders are our team that's really dominating the market over here, and I think they want to try to rival that.
Getting back to where we started with Taylor Hall, we're shooting this on Tuesday, and he is expected to play tonight with Arizona on a line with Phil Kessel. So looking forward to seeing that. And
I can't wait. I cannot wait to watch the game.
Yeah,
I cannot wait to see
right here.
Arizona.
And the good thing about Taylor Hall, like, you think about Arizona, do they have a number one center? I mean, Schmaltz, He's not really a number one, right?
They do not have a number one center.
But Phil Kessel doesn't really need a number one center to thrive. Neither does Hall. Like, think about Taylor Hall. Who's he played with down the middle as a number one center? And he still generates offense, so he should be totally fine in Arizona.
Yeah, listen, Rick Tocchet's done a really good job on piecing guys together that match really well. I think Clayton Keller has got to make a step forward in terms of his development of being a number one center. He's got to be a guy that goes in there and is the disher, is the guy that gets a little bit more dirty in those high traffic areas and really allows this Phil Kessels and Taylor Halls to thrive.
All right, guys, we are not only quickly approaching a new year, we're also approaching a new decade. So we are putting together our all-decade team. I say are. These two are putting together their all-decade team today. That's still to come. And while these guys think about their picks, let's turn it over to Pierre McGuire, who's joined by Leafs team president, Brendan Shanahan.
What a pleasure it is to be joined by Brendan Shanahan, three-time Stanley Cup champion, Olympic gold medalist, and Hockey Hall of Famer in 2013. Brendan, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure, Pierre.
All right, how does a guy from Mimico, Ontario become the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, that's, yeah, it's, there's a few steps in between there, but that wasn't lost on me when Toronto had called and talked to me about coming in and doing this job, just what it would mean to my family, not just my immediate family, my wife and kids, but my father's passed away. He passed away in 1990, but my three older brothers and their kids and my neighbors and high school friends and we all grew up Toronto Maple Leaf fans and as you know, and in lots of hockey cities, for a hockey family, sort of crowding around the TV on a Saturday night for Hockey Night in Canada is like your tribal moment. So it was very meaningful to me, and I still appreciate it every day.
I look at your career, and one of the things I really admire about all the things you accomplished, you learned along the way. You learned about a lot of things along the way. You were second overall pick. Your number was retired, obviously, with the London Knights, so you've had a lot of success. So let's start here, Toronto. Yeah. What have you learned about your job, being the president of the Leafs so far?
Well, it's sometimes, it's hard to sometimes describe, and that's I guess what I've learned is that it can change every day, and like I will have people say, "Give me your typical day," and or tell me exactly what you do, and it really does sort of evolve over time, or depending on the week, depending on the time of year. But I like that about the job. It's not all hockey on the ice. It's lots of other things as well. But first and foremost, when I got here and sort of was evaluating, assessing what we had to do, first and foremost is the hockey team and the product on the ice. And you can get caught up, letting the tail wag the dog if you start thinking about. I won't even get into specifics, but you start thinking about a variety of subjects that go around running an organization. When first and foremost we had to improve the product on the ice, and it's always a work in progress for all NHL teams, not just us. And anytime at any point in the season or in any particular season, it's really just a snapshot. There's no general manager or team president in the NHL that looks at their team on a given day and says, "This is it. We're done. We're done evolving. We're done growing. We're done making changes." So it's a fluid job, and I enjoy it very much. How it changes from day to day.
I'll never forget. I was doing a playoff series in Tampa, and I was at the airport, and my phone rang, and it said your name on it. So I picked it up, and you said to me, "Pierre, I have a plan." It was your first year doing it. What's the plan?
Well, I mean, the first year was a difficult year because I didn't want to jump in and sort of make guesses or just take follow through with actions on the advice of other people. So it, I think that to sit back and be patient and really evaluate things yourself was advice I got from a lot of people that I respect. But it is sometimes hard to be patient to do that. And the plan was really at the time was exactly what I just sort of mentioned before. It was to fix the product on the ice. And in the NHL now with the salary cap too, like it's not just about making trades. It's which I don't do those. My general manager does. But even when a general manager wants to make changes, you have to. Unlike other jobs where you say, I don't like this, our current principal, so we're going to move him out and bring this one in. It doesn't move that quickly for the NHL. You have to, when you want to make a trade, you have to make sure that he's the right player for you, but also that there's a fit. You've got to find a home for your player, and that player has to fit. So the days in the 80s and 90s where people were just swapping players and you could totally transform your team overnight are somewhat gone. And very rare now do you see those big blockbuster trades with several players moving all at once. So it was a bit of a process, and I tried not to listen, especially in the beginning. I tried not to listen to people like yourself because it made me angry because you weren't saying anything that wasn't true. Quite frankly, the product I think that we had at the time, I used to say to people, like, if I were doing these shows, I'd probably be thinking worse or saying worse. And it's really hard to be patient. And you can't really ask other people to be patient for you. But over time, we started to accumulate some good players. We started to get things in order. We started to accumulate good people, good staff, and that's also a big key, as you know. It's the ability to try to not just improve your team, but sustain it over time is a goal that we all have, and that comes from having the ability to hire good people, which our owners have been extremely cooperative for me in surrounding myself with really good people.
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the fascinating hires was your ability to get Lou Lamoriello, the man that drafted you in New Jersey, to come to Toronto. How did you do that?
You know, it just worked out. The timing, it wasn't a planned thing. It was I was as surprised as anybody, really, when there was a small window in time where he was available and intrigued with the opportunity. We had some good young people like Mark Hunter and Kyle Dubas that were sort of learning the job, and I just thought that he would just be such an important impact for the organization. For what we needed at the time, and the foundation and the stability and all those things you're trying to build from the ground up. He was a great guy for us, and but yeah, it was just luck. I didn't go into that season thinking that he would be available, but I certainly had my eye out when we made a change at the end of that season. We made changes to our management. And we didn't hire anybody right away, but I was certainly looking for somebody. I was relatively new, and Kyle Dubas and Mark Hunter were my two assistant general managers, and they were still relatively new. I was looking for somebody that had some experience.
How hard was it not to renew Lou?
No, I think all of those decisions are difficult ones, and it's. I think that without going into all the nuances of what you draw into your decision, I think the more important thing is you have relationships with people, and sometimes, and I remember it even as a player, sometimes you have relationships with people and they tell you things that you might not agree with or you don't want to hear. And that's sometimes just the part of being the boss or being in charge. And we're not in charge forever, but when we are, we're expected to make those calls, and it's like similar to players, same thing with management. It's about anticipating and growing your own people. So I just thought that the timing was right, but it's never easy to have those conversations.
So I talked about how I'm fascinated by all the things you've learned in your career. I really am, because I've watched you and studied you, and I think you've learned a lot along the way. What did you learn from the 1998 Olympics with your team losing?
Well, that one confused me, actually, because I remember, for those who don't remember, the 98 Olympics, Canada was a favorite, and we were actually really playing well. Like, we had really smoked the United States team, Sweden. We were just really humming along, and we ran into a hot goalie in Dominic Hasek in the semifinal game. And I think they were winning 1-0, and we maybe tied it up with our goalie pulled. We went through overtime and didn't score. We were expected to win gold, but then we found ourselves in a shootout. And I remember the coaches sort of getting in a pack and huddling together. And at that time, we didn't have shootouts in the NHL, so it's not like we had like 4 or 5 moves in our bag. We had breakaways, obviously, but that's a different thing. It's not something that we really practiced. So all of a sudden, the coaches are in a huddle, and we're saying, "Oh my God, we have a shootout, like to survive." And I remember thinking at the time, like as they came back and were sort of rattling off the numbers, who was going to shoot and the order in which they were going to shoot. They kept saying the names, and I kept on thinking, like, say my name, please say my name. And I was the 5th guy, the 5th and final guy. And immediately my mind goes to, like, you don't care how you win it, just so long as you win it. But I'm a very positive thinker, and you want to have an impact, and you want to be important to the team, and so you're thinking, like, okay, like, I'm going to have a chance to win this thing, be ready. And when it did come my turn, they had scored 1 goal and we hadn't scored any. So it didn't work out. I remember as I watched each of our guys miss and miss, I had a move in the back of my head that I had done in the shootout in the All-Star game that year on Ole Kolzig.
In Vancouver, right?
Yeah, where I was a shooter, so I think every goalie thought I was going to shoot, and I'd come in with speed and just sort of like, just do like, it's not even like a fake so much as like a flex. That's a wrong way to put it. But just like, sort of like a little shake, and the goalie would drop, I'd step around and put in the empty net. And I'd done it to Cujo in a breakaway thing a couple years before that. He said, "That's a really good move for you." Cujo was our goalie in practice, or our goalie for the Blues. So that's a really good move for you because we all expect you to shoot 5-hole. And so we're all going to drop as soon as we see you, move your shoulders. So I had this move in my head, but as we got closer and I started to see all these guys not have success, I started to think to myself, like, ooh, maybe just go 5-hole. Maybe just keep it safe and don't look stupid. And then I had this thought in my head, actually, as I was like skating out on the ice, because if the Czech guy before me scores, I don't even get to shoot. And I got mad at myself as I'm skating on the ice, and I just said, look, to myself, like, this is why they picked you. They picked you because you're supposed to have a little, courage in this situation. So you have a responsibility to do what you think is the right move. I didn't do it well. I didn't execute it well even to begin with, but I did try to do that. And I remember just sort of making like a little bit of a move, and Hasek just froze. He didn't even bite one bit. And like it came to the point where I was almost like waiting for some net, and he just was with me the whole way. He was almost mirroring the puck with his gloves, and I thought to myself, like, I'm about to skate behind the net. Like, there's just nothing there. And I shot the puck sort of knowing, like, he read this, and like I said, I don't think it was my best effort. But it confused me at the time because I remember, being really sad and obviously and apologizing to the country for not coming through in that moment, and turning this into a way longer story than I thought it would be. But for a few days, we go to the closing ceremonies, then we got to get all the way back to North America and series of flights. And I remember thinking, like, why did this happen? This doesn't happen. You expect success, you want success, and I went home and I wrote on a piece of paper. I said to my wife, I think I know what this means. It was too easy. We couldn't just show up at the first Olympics and just win a gold. We wouldn't have appreciated this. This is about like getting kicked hard and stung hard for 2002. And so I went and wrote on a piece of paper that, I'm going to make the team in 2002. We're going to win the gold medal. And I sealed it up and I put it in an envelope and I hid it in my desk. And luckily 4 years later, I was able to be on that team. I was not one of the main players. I was a fourth line guy. And I remember I broke my thumb in the second or third game. And I just thought, like, there's no way. I was still thinking about 98. There's no way I'm not playing. And so we were able to have success, and I went home and took the letter out of my desk and showed my wife.
But you accepted responsibility, and I think that was one of the things. You accepted the role that was created for you by Pat Quinn and the coaching staff in 02. Is that fair to say?
Oh, I played on lots of Team Canadas where you took what was available, and it wasn't my first time. And that can evolve over time. I remember in '96 World Cup, like Steve Yzerman was a healthy scratch in the early games, and then got in a game and scored a late game winning goal, and then suddenly became our and wasn't complaining about his role, and suddenly by the time the tournament ended, he was our most important player. I think even in 2002, Jerome McGinley was a young up-and-coming player.
He wasn't even at the camp to start.
Wasn't even invited to the camp, and ends up scoring 2 goals in the gold medal game. So when you play for any team, and especially if you have an opportunity to play for Canada where you've got so many great players, you take whatever role they give you, and you do whatever role. It could change over the tournament, or you could just be a fourth line momentum changer, banger, and you might be a 50 goal scorer in the NHL, but for those 2 weeks, this is what you do.
What did 97 and 98 teach you as a player in terms of commitment to win back-to-back cups?
Well, I think they're both different. I think in 97, I think the exercise sort of humbles you a little bit because, even now, we all try to build these teams, and you have to be calculated and sort of like how you build a team from the ground up. But then what I realized when I played 97 is, wow, there's a lot of luck involved as well. And there's a break here in the second round, or a break in game 3 of the third round, where you start to look back and say, if that didn't hit the post, or if this goal wasn't called back, or whatever, if we didn't catch this break, we might not be standing here holding the cup in the final. So I learned that sometimes you win, even though they hand out the cup at the end of the 4th round, sometimes you win the cup in game 2 of round 1. Sometimes you win the cup in game 7 of round 2. And so it's humbling in that regard. I'd say the greatest lesson in winning the back-to-back was for people that would say, you guys have won, what about complacency? And I'd say, well, obviously you think about it completely backwards, because when you win, it's like a bear or an animal tasting meat for the first time. Like, berries and shrubs no longer are good enough. Once you win, it's just the opposite. You become like that is, you've tasted it now. You've seen what it's like. You've seen what it takes. You've seen how far you can push beyond what you thought were your limits. You've seen your teammates come to your support. You've come to their support, and you want right back at it. You
were not a meek player. You were robust. I think it's fair to say that. How nasty was Colorado, Detroit in those days?
It was great. And the interesting thing about that rivalry, it was the two teams really did dislike each other. And it doesn't mean that we didn't respect them. You can respect somebody and still not like them. We really didn't like them, and they didn't like us. But what was more interesting is that, with all due respect, there were other great teams in the league at the time, New Jersey and Dallas and several others. But it was, you could argue that we were the 2 best teams in the league, that, in any given night, there might have been between 12 and 16 future Hall of Famers on the ice. And when I think about the game on March 26, 1997, which was the really sort of a galvanizing moment for the Detroit Red Wings, we were down 5-3 in the third period. People remember the brawls, and they remember all the fights of the game, but we came back and won that game 6-5 in overtime. So it's probably the most, even now, you'll sometimes see clips on it, like on this date, whatever many years ago. And I've seen some highlights of the game, and I've seen some repeats of it. It's still maybe the most entertaining game I've ever participated in, that if you're a hockey fan, it sort of touches all of the bases.
2002, your coach was Scotty Bowman. That's the last game you ever coached. Carolina, you win the cup. The night before, I had dinner with him at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, and he told me he was going to retire the next day if they won, and I couldn't tell anybody. Did you know he was going to retire after that game?
No, if you look, while we're celebrating on the ice, none of us knew that Scotty was going to retire. While we're all celebrating on the ice, and he's coming up to us one by one, and he's hugging us, and he's telling us in those moments. And so, you know, we were all shocked, and you know, then you'd go and hug a player after talking to Scotty, and you'd be like, you know, yelling and screaming, and then he'd say, "Did you hear Scotty's retiring?" And we'd say, "Yeah." Like, oh my God, like, anyway, and then you'd go and hug another guy, and so it started to make our way around on the ice. And, you know, the great thing about Scotty was sort of from that point on too is I think there's a part of us, we all wanted to talk to him more. We certainly wanted to hear the Pittsburgh stories and the Montreal stories. And we were being coached by somebody that was currently in the Hall of Fame. But Scotty doesn't talk to his players, and I think that's by design. I think that's how he was taught, how he learned from the Toe Blakes of the world, that there's a certain distance you keep from your players. So since then, he used to come down to the dressing room, and he was like chatty, and he's very, you know, conversational, as you would know, but we didn't, and we all wanted to have that. We all wanted to, you know, get more back from him. And I laugh sometimes when people talk about like communication. I'd say, like, for all of us, you know, even our captain, Steve Yzerman, you might go 3, 4, 5 months without, you know, having a one-on-one conversation with Scotty, which might even involve just like grabbing a coffee, like in the dressing room, saying, "Hey, you know, how was your Christmas?" Like, that just didn't occur. And he would speak to us as a group, but very, very seldom did he sort of use his voice on us one-on-one. Usually when it was a one-on-one with Scotty, it wasn't for a good reason. It wasn't. You weren't getting called in to be told that you were playing really well.
That's right. So after Scotty left, Dave Lewis was there for a short time.
Yeah.
And then Mike Babcock came in, and you played for Mike. And what did you learn from Mike that led you to believe that he could help you turn the Toronto Maple Leafs around?
Well, I think that Mike, you know, I think even in Detroit, even with that veteran group, after Scotty, there was a little bit of a letdown. And you know, we weren't as sharp, we weren't as disciplined, and we weren't as structured as we were under Scotty. And that's not a knock at Dave Lewis. I think that was just a direct result of, you know, after having Scotty there for 10 years now, you know, there's the guys maybe sort of ease back a little bit. So I thought what Mike did was he brought back that structure and that discipline. He was certainly somebody that had a game plan, had a very detailed game plan, and he was a communicator. And so going from a coach like Scotty, who never communicated, to now going to a guy like Mike, who communicated with you every day, was, for me and for a lot of the players, you like to know where you stand. And so I thought that he had done a really good job in sort of pulling that team back together and giving that team structure, and giving that team a game plan again. So I used to kid around with him though sometimes, because he's I said to him once, you know, "Mike, if I have a good game and someone asks you to compliment me, could you please not compliment me, because they hurt my feelings?" Because you know, he'd say like, "Oh yeah, you know, Shanahan had 3 goals tonight, and for a guy that old and that slow, that's amazing, and he played really well." Yeah. And we used to kick that around and laugh about it. And I think that I always at the time you know, appreciated again that he was a guy where, in contrast to Scotty, both brilliant coaches, both guys that Scotty's in the Hall of Fame, Mike will probably be in the Hall of Fame, but one of them we were going to Barry Smith, like, "Barry, what does Scotty want from me?" From Mike, we heard it directly, and that was sometimes a good thing too.
How hard was it to travel to Arizona and fire Mike?
Yeah, it's not the good part of the job, for sure. And that's I think people that do this job, there are a lot of good days, and then there are bad days where you have to make a decision like that, and it's based on how things are going in that moment and how things are going with the team at that time, and whether or not you think that they're going to be a part of the solution, or if you have to look elsewhere. So part of the job, not a fun part of the job.
One of the things that I think you did that really helped hockey was during the nuclear winter 2004-2005, you had the Shanahan Summit, so-called Shanahan Summit, to try to identify what needed to change with the rules. I thought it was really progressive. At that time, did you know that there were issues with coaches around the league that some players will bring up down the road in terms of verbal abuse or potential physical abuse or things like that? Did you know any of that stuff at that time?
You know, I don't know that any of us would have put it that way at the time. I think at the time we were thinking, when we met, it was players, it was coaches, it was TV executives, it was managers, referees. It was all the people that sort of were responsible for the product on the ice. So our focus at the time was the game had really stopped. In some respects, a lot of players started to think the game was becoming less and less entertaining. So that was really the focus on that meeting. And I always, the meeting was set up in a way in which it was confusing to me why managers just met with managers and refs just met with refs and players just met with players. And nobody ever shared each other's experience with each other. And I remember even being in the meeting and a coach and a manager and some players. And I generally just sat back in the meeting and let everyone sort of take over. But they'd be going down the road with a certain idea, a certain rule, and a referee would speak up and add his perspective that would tell us that this was the complete wrong way, wrong direction to be going on the road. So having everybody there was really helpful, and that was really the focus of that. And the group had no teeth. Like we weren't put together by the league in any way. We were in a work stoppage, and it was just a matter of what happened was that particular year there was a really great Hall of Fame class that went in, and I thought that they all had these great suggestions about the game and where the game should be going. And at the time, I don't even know if there certainly wasn't Twitter, or I don't even know where you'd find these things, but it was in the newspaper the next day and then it was gone. And I just thought, like, these are all great ideas, but they don't ever get to stick because we don't ever talk with the other side. And like I said, there was a lockout going on. We had nothing to do with like the business of hockey or the lockout. It was just a bunch of people that loved the game that knew when we did come back, we were going to have to be better.
It is better. I think you would agree the game is much better. You were a big part of that, so I tip my hat to you. I think about it now, and you were as nasty as there was when it came to play, and I say that as a compliment, you know that. Are you worried that maybe a little bit of the physicality is coming out of hockey?
Well, I would say that there's probably, and I think you could probably back this up with just the data that's available to you. There's probably more hitting in hockey now than there was back then. So the physicality comes in a different way. The players are smarter. They're in better shape. They're faster. You can't slow them down with hooking and holding as much. So the hitting is, like I said, the shifts are shorter because they're intelligent. They know now not to extend a shift. So they're always out there with energy. They come with speed. They finish. Everyone finishes their checks. So I would say that we all would love to have like physicality in that sort of complete package. When of a player, and I remember talking to Mark Hunter when he was scouting for us and saying to him, because he was very entrenched, he was coming from junior hockey, really knew the game and the players well coming up, and I described a couple of players that could really contribute to the team and play the game really well, but also had that physical edge, and asked him, like, can you find us some of these guys in the draft? And one of the things he had said to me was with some of the rule changes in junior hockey that fewer and fewer players were playing that style. There are guys in our league right now that play that style that are very good at it. They're good players, and they also bring a physical edge. They're sort of that Cam Neely package. But in the 90s, there were one of those on every team. Now there's sort of, I don't know exactly how many, but they're not very many. So I think physicality is always going to play a role in hockey. I think it can take on different forms. I think that grit takes on different forms. Igor Larionov, is not a big guy. They call him the professor, and yet he's one of the grittiest.
Can't believe he fought Forsberg.
Mentally tough people I've ever played with. So I think that takes on different forms.
One last one for you. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Do you ever allow yourself, because you've hoisted the cup 3 times, do you ever allow yourself to think about what a Stanley Cup here in Toronto would be like?
Well, that's the job. I mean, we all do. We all wherever they think whoever's working in any organization around the NHL thinks about it. So I'm no different in that. Absolutely, that's having that sort of like visualization in the back of your mind is it's great to have, and it's sometimes fun to on a drive to think about some of those things that are sort of at the end of the finish line, but then we all just go back to, what do we have to do today? What do we have to do to get ourselves better? What do we have to do to make ourselves one of those teams that has the potential to do this? And I say to people all the time here in Toronto as well, because once when the team was rebuilding, it was sort of in some ways. I remember somebody saying to me once, a fan coming up to me and saying, we support the rebuild of this team, and it's just going to be so much fun when this team is good and contending, a contending team. It's just going to be so much more peaceful in the city. And I said, no, it's the opposite. Right. It's like from when I look at some of these other cities and teams that have won, there's a team this year that will be unhappy with their staff at a certain moment. They'll be unhappy with their defense at a certain moment. They'll be unhappy with their power play or their offense at a certain moment. There'll be a team that thinks all those things in a snapshot during this season that will win the Stanley Cup. Yeah. And we make the we make the mistake of seeing a team at the end where it all comes together and thinking that it just went beautifully for them all year long. The highs and especially the lows are sort of those lessons. In those moments are the lessons that help you hopefully have the good fortune of winning a Stanley Cup.
Thank you for your time, and Merry Christmas. Yeah. Really good seeing you, Brendan.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pierre. Nice conversation there with Brendan Shanahan. Quick programming note, ahead of championship week in fantasy football, we'd like to give a shout out to the Roto World Football Podcast, where our Roto World writers give you everything you need to know to set your lineups for the playoffs. New episodes are available every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, wherever you get your podcast. All right, guys, now it's time to continue the all-decade team and your selections. Let's remind everybody and also remind you guys of where we are from last week. Jonesy and Sharpie selected our 6 defensemen and 2 goaltenders. Apparently, Chicago was well represented.
Yeah, obviously Sharpie was involved with that.
Homer much?
Yep, no question. Yeah, you got to love Sharpie.
There it is.
Yep, he's very dedicated to his team.
Yep, he's loyal.
Yep. Which we probably might be too.
Yeah, it's understandable. Let's put together our 4 lines of forwards. We're looking at the years 2010 right up to the present. Biggest impact players. And JR, I want to point out from listening to you, you weren't getting specific with positions. You just wanted the best players out there.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I think the centermen have dominated the best players in the game. I say that because we'll show you some of the guys that are on this list, but I'm going to go with my first inkling of the first line, which I think everybody should agree with. Sidney Crosby, right down the middle. I don't think there's been a player since Wayne Gretzky that's affected the National Hockey League as much as Sidney Crosby's cups, awards, everything you can ask for in a captain is Sidney Crosby. Number 2, you can't, on the wing, Alex Ovechkin, the best goal scorer that we have seen since Wayne Gretzky, Brett Hull. But the only guy I think has a chance to catch Wayne Gretzky's goal record, which is an amazing thing to talk about. 8 or 9 50-goal seasons, probably get another one this year. Now Stanley Cup winner. And I'm going to go on the other side with Patrick Kane. This guy continues to be one of the most electrifying, one of the best goal scorers, one of the best playmakers, one of the most feared guys in the National Hockey League in terms of defenseman scare. That's what Kane brings. And he's won cups, he's won MVPs, he's done it all. So my first line, Crosby, Ovechkin, and Kane.
I'm not going to argue. Normally we don't agree on everything, but in that situation there, JR, I agree with you 100%.
I love it. See, we're starting off good.
Easy.
I'm with you.
Too easy. Yeah.
My second line now, there might be some arguments there. Well, let me know as I continue on.
Yep.
Let me know what your thoughts are. But I go Anze Kopitar. No position in particular. But Kopi's won Selke, he's won cups in LA. He's quietly getting it done every single year. He's fourth now in career points in LA Kings history, over 900. I love him in my second line. Evgeny Malkin. Travesty he was left off the top 100 players in National Hockey. Like, it's a joke. I mean, what were they thinking not leaving him on there? Winning scoring titles, winning cups, being a monster in the postseason. I love everything about Gino's game. And my third guy, Patrice Bergeron.
Wow.
Mr. Perfect,
wow.
Perfection line. Just does everything well, winning Selkies. His number 37 will be up in the rafters at some point, the TD Garden Arena there in Boston, along with all those other jerseys up there. So I think those three guys have a place in my second line.
It's a great second line. You look at all those guys. I agree with you with Malkin. He's one of my favorite guys to watch because he brings everything: grit, tenacity. He's mean, scores goals. He's an assist guy. He's always up there in penalties. I mean, that's my type of player. He's an old school type player. Kopitar, remember Wayne Gretzky called him during their cup runs the third best player on the planet.
In the world, yeah.
Third best player on the planet. I mean, when Wayne Gretzky tells you you're in the top 3 best players
pretty impressive.
on the planet, then you have to start listening and paying attention. I think Kopitar has proven that he deserves to be on this great call. And how can you not have Bergeron there? You want to talk about one of the most intelligent, one of the most creative, best leaders. He's won the Selkies, won the Stanley Cup. It's a great second line. Totally agree with it. So the third line becomes a little bit harder.
Hold on. Let's just review.
Oh, we want to review? Good.
Review
Okay,
the top 2 lines. We seem to have approval across the board here with these picks. Ovechkin, Crosby, Kane. Well done, JR. Also to you for the second line here, Ace, Kopitar, Bergeron, and Malkin. All right, 2 lines left. Let's kick off the third, JR. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little outside the box. I know it's the decade team, okay, but I think a couple of these players have done things that have transcended the generations and transcended the decade aspect, and they've been so good in this decade. But I still think maybe 2000, 2010 they were their best, but they're still unbelievable since 2010. Joe Thornton comes to my mind right away. You talk about a guy who has 1,600 games. He's 14th in all-time points. He's 8th overall in assists, and he's still playing the game. He's a first-ballot Hall of Famer without question. He's one of the best leaders. When I played with him, he's one of the best leaders and one of the most loved guys that I've ever played with. I'm going to go on the other side and say Steven Stamkos. How can you not say Steven Stamkos? I know he hasn't won a cup yet, but he's a guy that has scored 60 goals. He's known as one of the best goal scorers and one of the best leaders in the game, so I'm going to go with Steven Stamkos. And I'm also going to go way off the grid here again, too, with Patrick Marleau. Patrick Marleau has shown I know. Hey, listen.
Wow.
Hey, listen.
I love you, Patty.
Yeah, Patrick has shown true professionalism in the way that he's played. Over 550 goals, I think, is his longevity. And again, what he's meant to San Jose, what he's meant to a lot of young players. He's just, again, another player who's played 1,500 games. So I'm going to go off the grid, and I'm going to throw on a guy that maybe I don't like so much, or don't care for so much personally, but professionally, the guy's a stud, Patrick Marleau.
No, he is, and it's so rare to find 2 players going 1 and 2 in the same draft, still playing. Like 20 some odd years later, how rare is that?
Yeah, and having an effect on the game.
It's crazy, right? Yeah. And usually when you play that long, it's because you've won. But they haven't won cups. I mean, they've won Olympics, they've won world championships, but they haven't won cups yet. So that just tells you something about how they are as people, as individuals. The fact that organizations still want to have these guys around to be able to have an impact on the younger players. Because if they weren't those kind of guys, there's no chance, PB, they'd get that extra third, fourth, fifth chance to stay in the league.
Bringing us to the fourth and final line, and I'm picturing you guys going through this and getting to this point of your selection and realizing this is the hardest one because you're going to leave off, no matter what you do, you're going to leave off some awesome players that you respect and admire quite a bit. So for this final round, let's go back and forth. Let's alternate. And who would like to kick it off?
I'll start. I'll get started with Nicky Backstrom. Nick Backstrom is a player that I think is very underrated. I thought when Coach Trotz had him, he had a chance to win a Selke, and people were just seeing the assists, and they were seeing him playing with Ovechkin, feeding those one-timers. They didn't really appreciate what he brings to the table day in and day out in terms of his 200-foot game. But he's one of the most smart, intelligent Swedish players I've seen come around in a long time, period. And the way he's able to make plays consistently, JR, over the last 10 years, like he's been an integral piece to that Washington Capitals team.
That's actually a really good call because I'm sitting here thinking Tavares maybe in the middle. I mean, Tavares has been one of the most dominant players, and a lot of the times with a lackluster team in the island. He's always put up the points, always put up the goals. But you look at Backstrom, it's a great call because you wonder if Ovechkin would have been scoring as many goals if he didn't have a playmaker like Backstrom. I think Backstrom is probably the most underrated star in the National Hockey League for what he does. His talent, his playmaking ability, how smart he is, how reliable he is. It's a great call, I think, on that side. I'm going to go on the other side, and I'm going to take Marian Hossa, a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Here's a guy who's been in the finals, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. He's won 3 cups. He to me epitomizes a full, hard-nosed, he can do anything type of game. He was so hard to play against. One of the heaviest bodies on the puck. When you tried to get him off the puck, it's almost like you were trying to move Mount Everest. He is just absolutely a bull. They call him the Hoss for a reason. One of the best defensive forwards I've ever seen, and one of the best leaders I've ever seen. So I'm going to go with Marian Hossa on my wing as on the fourth line.
I'm with you on that. I mean, you think about Jonathan Toews' game, how it's been impacted by not having Hossa there. Hossa brought so much to the table playing with him. They were a dynamic duel, these two. And the fact he went to a cup final with Detroit, cup final with Pittsburgh, won cups in Chicago. I mean, you can't forget the impact he's had on those teams. But I think my third guy, speaking of cups, is Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel came from Boston, went to Toronto in the fishbowl. Talk about playing with a guy playing with like no centers whatsoever. Like it was Phil Kessel and maybe Bozak, maybe, and that's nothing against Bozak. He's won a championship with St. Louis Blues, but I mean, come on, like seriously, this is Phil Kessel here, a 30-goal scorer every single year. Goes to Pittsburgh, fits in nicely with the Penguins, wins multiple cups, and then he's seen as a guy that needs to bring that little extra X factor out to Arizona to push him over the top.
You don't think and I know he was a big part of those cups, but you don't think he's Malkin and Crosby are going to get more of the accolades and the props for winning cups?
They would because it's their team. But we think about the HBK line. I mean, there's not HCK line.
That's a tough one for me.
HEK line. I mean, HBK line. There's Bonino and Hagelin. I mean, what are those guys doing now? Those are nice, serviceable parts, but those guys aren't driving lines like how Phil Kessel did.
I don't mind it. I don't mind Kessel. I'm a big Kessel fan. I don't mind it. I think, he was rated the most overrated player.
But you don't love it. It seems like you don't love it.
I don't love it. I'm okay with it because Phil Kessel is the real deal.
What do you love? Talk to me.
I find it hard to leave off Jonathan Toews, a guy who was, captain serious. He's won so many Selke trophies. He's been one of the most dependable players, obviously led 3 Stanley Cups in Chicago. He's just a true ultimate professional. It's tough to leave him off this list for us, and it's tough to leave Tavares off there. It's you can't have everybody, right? But the fact that we don't have Tavares and Toews on this list right now is totally blowing my mind. But I guess what we got is what we got, and I still think it's pretty special. It's a pretty special 4 lineup.
Let's take a look at what we do have, the 4 lines here. Nice job voicing who you think would have been the next 1 or 2 guys on. Ace, how about you?
Well, I'd like everyone that's on there right now. I was thinking maybe a guy like Getzlaf, maybe only because he's won a Stanley Cup, and he's a player that makes everyone around him better. But I can't argue with taking anybody off this list.
Which JR pick would you take off?
Listen, if I had another opportunity, maybe Brad Marchand. How good Brad Marchand has become a player.
But he hasn't played a lot.
Now he hasn't been the type of player that he has been the last 3 years.
Right.
So where is he from 2010 to 2015? But Brad Marchand right now, I mean, is one of the most dynamic players in the National Hockey League, which should get consideration. But
If you had your eraser out, would have been Kessel?
It's the all decade.
My eraser would have been Kessel.
All decade, not all half decade.
Your eraser goes
I
to
like
who?
how everyone's situated right there. Maybe Patrick Marleau, maybe. I'd maybe bump Patty Marleau off of there.
Yep.
But I like everyone on that list. I can make an argument that every guy on that list deserves to be on that list.
I can tell a lot of thought went into it. So, guys, very well done. It was fun to listen to you there. And that's going to do it for another episode of Our Line Starts. A reminder, you can subscribe for automatic downloads wherever you like to get your podcasts. And we'll see you here next time.